Pine smoke clung to the rafters of Stonehaven's great hall, turning torchlight into a hazy crown above the gathered ranks. I kept to the shadow of a pillar, palms flat against cool granite, the way I always did when the room swelled with alphas and betas and ambitions that smelled like iron and storm. I am Lyra. Omega. Pale hair, softer bones, a voice people forgot before I finished speaking. In Stonehaven, softness was a rumor you survived by hiding. The Alpha King, Aldrich of the High Range, stood before the council table, broad-shouldered and severe, his scent cut with winter wind. His words about borders and provisions skimmed over me like birds over ice until a sound split the hall, a thin, strangled cry. Not the cry of a warrior. The cry of a newborn. Aldrich's mask shattered. He moved, no, vanished, from the dais, door slamming against stone as he tore into the royal wing. The visiting alphas traded glances, concern, calculation, hunger. I edged closer to the corridor rail, telling myself I was only curious, that I wasn't following the king's scent like a thread through a maze. A grip fastened around my wrist. You. With me. Matron Sarah, the healer, eyes like flint, shawl bristling with sprigs of dried yarrow. She smelled of smoke and nettle and no fear at all. I'm not a healer. I managed. No, she said, tugging hard. You're an Omega. We reached the nursery, tapestries of moonwolves, riverstone floors, and a cradle carved with silver leaves. In it writhed the tiny prince, purple-faced, fists flailing against a fevered world. Aldrich knelt beside him, every muscle strung tight, the room thick with his distress. Two healers hovered, helpless. Milk rejected, fever stubborn. The air soured with panic. Lyra, Sarah said, and even my name sounded different in her mouth. Hold him. I froze. Aldrich's gaze landed on me like a hand to the sternum, heavy, unignorable. Please, he said, the words scraped raw. Soothe my son. I lifted the babe, light, too light, pressing him to the steady drum of my heart. I inhaled, counted 4 in, 6 out. My mother's cadence. I hummed the tune she left me the night fever took her, a valley lullaby with a river hidden in it. My scent, wildflower, rain on ash, a small, stubborn piece, unspooled into the air. Bit by bit, the prince's breath matched mine. The wrongness thinned, the sharp edges dulled. His fists loosened. His scent sweetened, like warm milk in dawn. He's settling, one healer whispered. By the moon, he's settling. Aldrich's shoulders dropped. He stood slowly, like a mountain relinquishing snow. What is your name? He asked, softer now. Lyra, I said. Lyra, he repeated, tasting it. You will not leave this room tonight. And just like that, the door I'd never been allowed to touch closed behind me from the other side. The nursery dimmed to violet as evening pressed its face to the windows. I rocked in a chair by the hearth, the prince curved against me, fever unwinding like a knot. Kai, Sarah murmured when she returned with broth and blankets. They've named him Kai. She checked his brow, lips pinching, then flattening in relief. Dropping. Good. Aldrich watched, silent, a fortress with a pulse. When Kai startled and whimpered, the king's scent flared, iron, storm, fear he couldn't afford. I breathed deeper, let the lullaby pull low and steady. Kai sighed, the small sound of an anchor finding the riverbed. He rejected every nurse, Sarah said to the king. But her scent threads with his. Her eyes slid to me. Rare, but not unheard of. She didn't say the other word for it, blessing, because blessings provoke envy. Aldrich nodded once, the kind of nod that becomes law. Lyra stays with the heir. Prepare the adjoining chamber. Send word that the presentation is delayed. He paused. Quietly. Politics rustled at the edges like rats in grain. When the king left, the room exhaled. Sarah touched my shoulder. You did well. You'll do better if you eat. She handed me a bowl. My hands shook. I hadn't noticed hunger under the thunder. Why me? I asked. Because you are not claimed, Sarah said simply. No mate's sent to tangle with his. And because some omegas are born with a river inside. You are one. I thought of the laundry lines, of being shoved aside at the kettle, of whispers, weak, soft, slow, salt ground into bread dough. I looked at Kai's sleeping mouth and felt a strange, bright heat unfurl in my ribs. I'll keep him safe, I said, and the words surprised me with their weight. Sarah's gaze warmed. Then listen, wolves in silk prowl closer than wolves in snow. The court will come smiling. Smile back. And smell deeper. Later, alone, I traced the carved leaves along the cradle. Beyond the door, Stonehaven shifted into night, boots, murmurs, the scrape of steel. I pressed my palm to Kai's chest. Thrum thrum. You little king, I whispered, have no idea how loud they'll shout to own your silence. His breath answered, small and sure. I slept sitting up, because leaving him felt like leaving air. Morning in Stonehaven is always the same, frost netting the courtyards, bells rolling down the towers, the kitchens opening like mouths. But the air seemed changed when the door admitted the queen. Mara of the Vale was beauty pitched to blade, amber eyes, dark braid glossed with oil, a cloak that said winter abate her. She stopped when she saw us. My pale head bowed over her son. So, she said. Not a question. Sarah's chin rose a fraction. The fever broke. He sleeps. Mara extended her arms. I lifted Kai, carefully, carefully. He stirred, face scrunching. Panic darted across the queen's features before she caged it, but I smelled it, citrus and smoke. Kai whimpered once, then settled against her. Relief softened Mara's mouth, only to be sheathed again. You will remain, she said to me, until the heir is declared whole. She surveyed my plain dress, my scuffed boots. You'll be given proper clothing. And rules. Rules, I echoed. Sarah's elbow was warning against my ribs. You will not discuss the heir's condition, Mara continued. You will not leave the royal wing unescorted. If you sense anything amiss, you will send for me or Matron Sarah. Do you understand? Yes, my queen. The metal in my voice surprised us both. Word travels in a pack faster than light. By midday the lower halls buzzed, Omega in the nursery, this one, Lyra, the quiet one, the one with the river scent. In the refectory, they'd be wagering how long until I was sent back to mending, or how long until I was hauled for questioning. I'd spent my life misting at the edges. Now, eyes stuck like burrs. Aldrich returned at dusk with the steward and Captain Kellen, dark-haired, heavier with knives than with mercy. There will be a presentation at noon tomorrow, the steward announced. To still the talk. Aldrich's gaze slid to me. Stand with him, he said. They need to see. See what? I asked before I could stop myself. That gentleness isn't an apology, he said, almost to himself. It is a choice. I did not sleep much. I learned the nursery locks. I found the hidden catch in the north wall, the one that released a slit of darkness barely wider than my shoulders. I carried Kai. I walked. I hummed. When he dreamed, he smiled, and the smile clipped my heart open. Out in the hall, something paused. A breath. A wait. I laid Kai back and went to the door. Who's there? Silence. Then footfalls retreating. My scent sharpened, the small warning a rabbit feels when the grass stares back. The great hall turned bright as the inside of a bell for the presentation. Banners spilled from the vaults. Nobles rose like waves, sense strings tangling, pride, doubt, hunger masked with honey. I kept Kai tucked against my breast, his ceremonial tunic a river blue that made his dark eyes look like night wells. My dress was simple silk, a kindness that felt like a test. Aldrich's voice carried without shouting. Stonehaven, he said. Your heir was ill. He is not now. He took Kai, lifted him. A sound like released breaths swept the room. Then the king turned and offered me his hand. I stared at it, startled, then climbed the steps to stand at his side. This is Lyra, he said. She is Omega. She soothed the heir when nothing else reached him. Murmurs rose, muskier this time. Captain Kellen's jaw flexed. Queen Mara's eyes were unreadable coins. For her service, Aldrich continued, I name her Shield of the Heir. The hall froze. The shield was an office given to seasoned betas, rarely to alphas, never to omegas. A chain was set around my neck, silver, cool, heavy with the royal crest. The weight pulled my shoulders back instead of down. Kellen stepped forward as the hall fractured into whispers. With respect, my king, tradition. Tradition is a trail, Aldrich said, not unkindly. Useful until it runs to a cliff. Kellen bowed, face carved from obedience and something darker. After, celebrations sprawled like a hunting cloak. Trays, music, wine too spiced to be harmless. I found the corner of the dais and made myself smaller, shield with the habit of a shadow. Nobles floated near, their words pretty, their sense not. One, Lady Vesper, silver like frostbite, smiled without her eyes. A curious choice, she said. But then, Aldrich always did love broken things he could make useful. I blinked. Are you broken, my lady? She laughed. My darling, I am proof that breaking is a verb one performs on others. Captain Kellen appeared with the grace of a knife being unsheathed. Careful, lady, he murmured. Some of us still prefer our politics without teeth marks. And some of us prefer our captains tame, she said, patting his arm as if he were a dog. She drifted away, leaving winter in her wake. Sarah joined me, a warm mountain beside a small tree. Every court smells like this, she said. Perfume on kindling. And you stay? I whispered. I don't stay, she said. I root. Across the hall, Aldrich watched me with an expression like a hand hovering above a wound, unable to help but aching to. I looked down at Kai and decided my river would not be damned by anyone's smile. War chews at the edges first. Messengers arrived white-faced, armor dented where words failed. Eastern scouts. Skirmishes by the ice bridge. Supply wagons gone missing where roads should be safe. The king sent Titan to steal. Mara's cast net of diplomacy stretched taut enough to sing. The castle breathed shorter. That night thunder knuckled the windows. I paced with Kai, slow arcs, my voice a thread. When the knock came, 3 soft taps, I went still. Who is it? Message from the queen, a woman said. Urgent. The storm's breath tried to push the door open for her. Slide it under, I said. The air sleeps. A pause like a held knife. It's spoken, she answered. News of the king. Another pause, longer, then the soft step back of patience choosing another door. At first light I sent a runner to Mara. No, she had sent no one last night. Captain Kellen posted 2 more guards. No one enters without my scent on their tongue, he told them, and their throats bobbed. Sarah brought vials the color of dusk. For the prince? I asked. For anyone who thinks poison is a strategy, she said. It masks the scent of wolfsbane. If it was used once, it will be used again. We began walking the walls at noon, Kai slum secure, my pace deliberate. I learned the stair groans, the draft that meant a slit window, the way the tapestry by the north casement breathed when a passage behind it yawned. I learned the guards' names and the names they didn't speak. When Kai fussed, I listened harder. The world narrows when a pup cries, and in that narrowing, truths announce themselves. In the corridor of stags, I caught it, a thread of resin-sweet wrongness. Not wolfsbane. Not common herb. Something brewed to smell like safety if you didn't know the river underneath. I followed it to a latch. A cupboard. An innocuous place for linens. Inside, folded sheets. Beneath, a vial. Sarah took it between 2 fingers. Ah, she said. I had hoped not to see that. What is it? Patience, she said grimly. Bottled for men who prefer their coups quiet. We sealed the vial in wax. I slept on the nursery threshold that night, one hand inside the cradle, and dreamed of water cutting stone, slow, relentless, choosing the valley all the same. 2 days later, the council convened with faces like shut doors. Aldrich stood at the head of the table, to his right Mara, to his left Kellen. Maps were pinned with bone needles. "We cannot sit and pray the ice holds," Aldrich said. "We ride at dawn." A rumble of assent, objection, fear. "And the heir?" Lord Bran asked, brows knit into half a net. "Given what, rumors whisper." His scent turned oily at the edges. "He remains under guard," Aldrich said. "And under my shield." His glance flicked to me at the wall, present but not included. Brant's mouth thinned. After the council, Aldrich came to the nursery, leathers, sword, the kind of quiet that leaves a shadow even in torchlight. He went to Kai first. He always did. His fingers, so large, so capable of ruin, touched his son's cheek like prayer. "He dreams," I said. "Of rivers, I think." Aldrich huffed something like a laugh. "I never dreamed until I was 17. Then I dreamed of falling. Woke ready to fight the floor." He straightened. "While I'm gone, you answer only to Mara and Sarah. Kellen keeps the walls. And Lyra." "Yes, my king? If anything tilts wrong, if the hall breathes in before a scream, take him. North tapestry. Stone latch 3 from the left. The passage spills you to the old goat path. Follow it to the birches. Wait for the river like a friend." "You've prepared this," I said. "Since the day he was born," he said, and the honesty hurt. "I am a king. I must inventory my losses before they arrive." He reached for the crest at my throat, and his knuckles brushed my skin. Heat arrowed, ridiculous, unwelcome. He stilled, scent flaring, then banked like a fire under snow. "Forgive me," he said, not meeting my eyes. "My roles collide. I will keep him safe," I said. "I believe you will," he answered. At the door, he looked back, and something in him looked back harder. I held Kai at the window the next dawn as Aldrich rode out, a black horse, a dark river of warriors, pennants snapping like warnings. The king looked up. How did he know which window? And for a heartbeat the hall, the tower, the road telescoped into a straight line between his eyes and mine. "Come back," I whispered, to a man who could not hear me and to a promise I wasn't allowed to want. Absence becomes its own inhabitant. It sat at the council table in Aldrich's place, it patrolled the walls beside Kellen, it shadowed Mara's crown. The castle learned to breathe around it. Kai learned to watch the way light puddled against stone, batting it with tiny fists that found my pendant and claimed it. He smiled more. He laughed once, startled himself, then did it again as if to test whether joy was a thing that stayed. Sarah kept visiting. Twice she arrived with dirt under her nails and wind in her shawl. "Garden walls," she said when I raised a brow. "They don't build themselves. And neither does trust." She checked Kai's gums and hummed along with me. "You're getting stronger, little river," she told him. "Make the world soften to your grip." Whispers thicken like fog. A beta nursemaid was suggested, then recommended, then surely prudent. Mara listened, face carved flawless, then sliced the suggestion neat. "The shield remains," she said. "If you fear softness, train harder." I began to like her in the way one likes a cliff, for refusing to move even when the sea insists. That night the storm returned, meaner now, chewing at the eaves. The knock did not come. Instead, a scrape at the servant's door, a lock tested, released, tested again. Kellen had rigged a bell there. It rang like a small, sharp star. Guards thundered. A shadow fled. In the stairwell they found only a leather thong and a scent that tried too hard to be nothing at all. At dawn, a messenger arrived from the north gate with a bruise blooming across his jaw. He bowed to Mara so low his hair brushed stone. "From the king," he croaked. A strip of oilskin. A map, circled where the snow bridge thins. A single line in Aldrich's hand, "Hold. I come." Something unclenched in my chest that I hadn't dared name. "Soon," Sarah murmured, catching it anyway. "The river bends." Soon didn't arrive before night fell again with knives in it. We left the nursery for the inner garden, Sarah's idea, so Kai could feel wind that didn't sneak under doors. Moonlight frosted the herbs. We walked the pebbled path between thyme and rue, guards pacing the wall tops overhead, their shadows long and watchful. I smelled it first. Pine resin, a bittersweet lifted on a draft that had no business in a walled garden. My river recoiled. Back, I said, quiet as a blade. Sarah's eyes sharpened. She shifted sideways, old bones suddenly arranged for speed. Door, she said. We moved, unremarkable pace, unremarkable faces, the way animals do when pretending they are not yet prey. The draft came again, up through the grating of the old cistern. Sarah flicked a glance. They tunneled, she breathed, furious and impressed. The grate was sealed from below, but the scent rose like a promise. Kellen's bell, another one I hadn't known about, thrummed once, twice, and then the garden filled with men. The first attacker vaulted the cistern's stone lip with the arrogance of someone who's never been told no. He landed light and fast, wrong scent, wrong eyes. Kellen met him mid-stride, a lion-made sword. Sarah shoved a vial into my palm and hissed, "If he fusses, smear it on your wrist." Then she planted herself between us and the breach with a staff I hadn't previously guessed she owned. I ran. Not away, but along a path I'd mapped so many nights my feet could walk it without me. Kai's breath hitched, then steadied as I breathed for him. We reached the north tapestry. I shouldered it aside, found the latch, 1, 2, 3, and the wall exhaled a cold breath. Inside, narrow stone, damp air, the heartbeat of old secrets. Behind me the garden sang metal on metal. Somewhere Kellen cursed like prayer. Sarah laughed, a witch's delight, and cracked wood against skull. I slipped into the passage and the dark took us the way a river takes a leaf, completely, without malice, with purpose. I did not look back. I set my hand to the wall and felt Stonehaven's spine. Hold, I told the stone, the child, myself. Hold until the king returns. Hold until dawn admits it's ours. The passage angled down. The air cooled. The world narrowed to Kai's warmth and the hush of water singing through rock far below. I walked and counted, hummed and remembered, and promised, out loud, because promises that matter deserve witnesses, that I would carry him through whatever tunnels men carved into our nights. The passage breathed cold against my teeth, tasting of old water and secrets. I moved by touch and memory, left at the crack seemed like a lightning vein, right where the wall puckered with quartz. Kai dozed, heavy as an oath against me. When his breath hitched, I sank my own lower until his small body remembered peace. The omega in me, always told to be small, expanded to fill the dark, became the only lamp that mattered. Stone gave way to timber. A ladder rose into black. I eased Kai higher in the sling, tied the loose end with my teeth, then climbed, every rung counting the heartbeats I could not hear from the garden. At the trap, I pressed my ear to the board. Night's hush. Wind combing scrub. No voices. I shouldered up, snow-cold air knifing my cheeks, and slid us into a stand of birches silver as moonbones. The goat path lay where Aldrich promised, etched along the ravine, narrow as a held breath. I crouched in the birch shade and listened. The castle behind us exhaled smoke and alarms and stubbornness. Far off, metal kissed metal. Kellen lived by the sound of it. I sent him a silent prayer stitched with rude words he'd appreciate. Shield, a voice murmured from the rocks. I turned so quick my balance swayed. A figure detached from the cliff, small, layered in gray, eyes that could become stone if asked. Beta, mountain-born. She touched 2 fingers to her brow. Etta, birch watch. The queen sent me before sunset when the wind turned wrong. Relief nearly buckled me. There was a breach in the garden cistern, I whispered. Kellen is making poetry from blade and bone, Etta said, faint smile. Come. The past's bad, but I've walked worse in the dark with a drunk goat and a broken lantern. She uncoiled a rope, looped it around my waist and her own. Leave your pride and your questions. Keep your feet. We edged along the wall, wind clawing, pebbles skittering into a throat of snow below. Twice I braced with palms and prayer while Etta murmured nonsense like a lullaby to gravity. Kai woke during the second traverse, fussed at the wind's cold fingers, then quieted as my scent thickened to warmth. At the second bend, Etta flattened us with a hiss. Boots above, wrong cadence, wrong metal. The voices tried for low but overshot into a brittle whisper, men who practice quiet like a language they didn't speak at home. Pass, Etta mouthed. We became birch shadows. The men crossed higher, their stink of resin-sweet masks scratching my throat. Kubru. Bottled patience. I tucked the knowledge into the place where I keep knives I don't show. Past the bend, the path broadened into a shelf under a leaning pine. Etta exhaled. Another hour, she said. Then the ravine loosens its jaw. There's a watch hut and a hollow where the wind forgets to bite. Your river smell will keep the little king warm. Her eyes softened when she glanced at Kai. He's all right? He is, I said. He is because he must be. Good, she said, and for a beat we were two women in the cold making the world smaller by holding what it would steal if it could. We went on. The watch hut crouched where the cliff shrugged back, built by hands that understood hunger and maps. Etta tested the jam with a shoulder. It yielded with a soft groan and a whiff of old smoke. Inside, darkness now tempered by the memory of every fire ever coaxed from damp kindling. We didn't dare flame. Etta piled lindried bracken against the leeward wall, and spread a wool that smelled like goat and thunder. I tucked Kai into the sling's cradle and rubbed his feet with my thumbs until warmth returned. Etta worked without wasted motion, blades small as a thought shaving curls from a knot of fatwood. I can get us a ghost fire, she said. Heat, no light. Trick my grandmother taught me to spite winter. She built a hollow with stones, struck sparks into a pinch of fungus, smothered the glow with ash until the heat settled like a secret. The room warmed to a kept promise. Why help us? I asked, not ungrateful, just honest. Beta Watch don't risk for palace games unless asked by someone who matters. Because the queen asked? Etta said. Because the king's first kindness to the Birch Watch was listening when the passes were closing and the rest of the council insisted the map was wrong. He sent grain and men with shovels, not orders. We remember. You trust him? I trust that he is a man who inventories his losses in advance and chooses anyway. She eyed me. I trust you less easily. That's wise, I said. I am an Omega who grew up learning that wolves in silk have thinner teeth than wolves in snow. Sometimes I forget to show my own. Etta's grin flashed silver. You showed them when you chose the passage instead of the door. People think Omega means soft. It means strategy with breath in it. Kai stirred, rooting. I bared my wrist and touched the inside of his lip with Sarah's clove-sweet salve. He settled, mouth working, lashes fluttering like small flags surrendering to sleep. I hummed, barely sound, more intention than note. Relief braided with guilt, relief that we were here, guilt that others might not be. Kellen's face came to me, impatient, impolite, loyal as a scar. Etta slept in slices of 10 breaths, waking to listen every 11th. I dozed between, river thrum in my chest. Each time I woke I inventoried child, heat, rope, blade, promise. The night stretched, tightened, then finally thinned to the color of bone. Dawn found us with frost bearding the pines and the wind undecided about kindness. Etta stood, rolled her shoulders, and offered a hand. Ready, shield? As I'll ever be, I said, which is how Omegas say yes when no wouldn't help. We stepped into morning that smelled of distance and iron and the first suggestion of water. By midday the ravine loosened into a bowl of scrub and old avalanche scars. A river whispered somewhere ahead, a sound like silk dragged over stone. Etta lifted her nose to it, inhaled, nodded. There, she said. The ford. After that, the old logging road. With luck, a northern patrol. Luck arrived in the shape of 4 shadows gliding out of firs, low and sure-footed. Wolves, no, shifters in wolf form, coats thick with mountain, eyes thinking. The largest, ash-gray with a bite taken from his left ear, eased forward with the politeness of a creature who could kill and chose not to today. He breathed in, tasted the air, and let his great head dip, first to Kai, then a fraction to me. He changed with efficient indifference to modesty, human in 3 breaths, scars mapped where fur had hidden them. "Run," he said, voice the size of a hearth. "North watch." His gaze skated to Etta. "We smelled the resin sweet." She tossed him the word like a bone. "Kubru," he grimaced. "Men who won't risk their names." His eyes softened at the sling. "Little king." "Run," I said, testing trust like a bridge plank. "Aldrich's ally? Since we were cubs breaking each other's noses over meat and honor." He grinned, broke into a laugh that shook pie and snow. "He broke more noses. I ran faster." The laugh died as quickly. "He sent for us. We guard the road to High Hollow." He tilted his head at the river. "You ready to cross?" We forded at a shallow where the river fanned flat over stones. Cold bit my calves hard enough to start tears. Kai woke and complained, small outrage like a trumpet muted with a handkerchief. I rocked him and told him the river's name, Narrowbone, and that it was older than all of us and never tired of carving. He quieted to listen. I don't know if he understood. Some part of me thinks alphas are born knowing the names of things that resist them. On the far bank, Run shifted back to fur and trotted ahead, tail a banner, ears flicking the news of the wind. Etta fell behind to sweep our tracks with a pine bough. I carried the air and the crest and a strange, steep sense of rightness, like stepping into a song I'd only hummed until now. We reached the old road by dusk. It ran like a healed scar toward the western foothills. Run lifted his muzzle and sang, a low note caught from winter. Answering howls rose, harmonized, layered. For a moment the mountains were a choir, and I forgot to be afraid. Torches bobbed ahead, controlled, shielded. Men and women in northern leathers, half with the easy grace of shifters and half with the quiet competence of betas who'd learned to keep up anyway. At their center, a woman with crow-black hair braided with bits of red cloth, every strip a story. She shifted human with a roll of shoulder, and approached with a warrior's smile and a mother's eyes. "Hail," she said, offering forearms. "Warden of High Hollow. You'll be wanting warmth." "I'll be wanting news," I said, surprising myself. "But warmth first." "Why shield?" she said, approval warm. "The news still be there when your toes thaw." High Hollow was less palace than refuge. A ribcage of stone cupping a hall of timber and hearths, windows narrow and mean to arrows, door bars thick as a man's thigh. It smelled of stew and oil and wet wool, and the relief of people who'd learned long ago to make safe spaces out of not much. Hale's people took us in without fuss, the best kind of welcome when your heart is still trying to step down from a gallop. A beta with barrel arms, Jory, built a cradle from 2 chair backs and a rope in the time it took me to blink. A shifter girl of 12 named Marn pressed a knit cap into my hand with grave ceremony. "For the little king's ears," she said, cheeks pink as dawn. "My wolf likes when my ears are warm." I slid the cap onto Kai's small head. He blinked, then gummed the edge, satisfied with kingdom and hat alike. We ate stew that tasted like every winter I had ever survived, root, salt, tenderness. Warmth moved back into my fingers like a shy animal. While the hall settled, Hale sat across from me, elbows on knees. "Your queen's message said Stonehaven's walls were tested from within," she said. "And that the king rides. We saw his fires on the eastern ridge last night. He's close." My throat tightened with something I refused to call hope. "In the garden, they tried the cistern," I said. "Kellen held. Sarah fought like a story your grandmother threatens you with if you're unkind." I left. I hate that I left. "You carried the heir," Hale said simply. "A king who returns to a dead heir doesn't have a kingdom to return to. He has a funeral." She sat back. "Who inside?" I weighed names. Lady Vesper's smile with the teeth hidden. Lord Brant's oil-slick scent. The steward's too neutral face. "There are hands on the knife and hands on the hilt," I said. "I can smell both if I'm given time." Kubru sits in cupboards behind folded sheets. Patience in a bottle. Whoever carries it doesn't trust their own scent. Hale's mouth tugged at one corner. That'll be useful in a hall full of perfumes. She looked toward the door as it thudded under a knock, 3 beats, then 2. A pattern. The bar lifted. Snow gusted. A figure stepped in, wind-worn and square as a promise kept. For a heartbeat he was silhouette and cold, and the smell of far roads. Then Aldrich closed the distance between us like a man walking out of a winter he had no intention of staying in. He didn't speak, not at first. He looked, at me, at Kai, at the chain at my throat, and the looking did more to me than any word could have. His scent hit, ragged with exhaustion, undercut with iron will and the wild joy of not finding the worst thing he'd been braced to find. "You made it," he said, voice hoarse. He reached, then stopped, hands opening empty. "May I?" I rose because kings should not kneel for what is already theirs. I transferred Kai into his arms. The baby wriggled, frowned, then, after one long breath, settled as if a circle had been closed that the world didn't know it had drawn. Aldrich bowed his head, eyes shuddering. He breathed his son in. When he lifted his gaze to me, gratitude moved through it like thaw. "Shield," he said. "Lyra." "King," I said, and only my mouth called him that. "The rest of me," said Aldrich, like a candle says flame. Reunion warmed the hall faster than fire. Warriors edged closer without crowding, the way pack does when relief is a communal meal. Run thumped Aldrich's shoulder with the casual insolence of someone who'd bitten him at 17 and gotten away with it. Hale handed the king a mug. Sarah, I realized with a jolt, wasn't here, still in Stonehaven or fallen or both. The thought made my skin too tight. Mara was not here either. Absence settled in the chair beside us like a cloaked woman with sharp ears. Aldrich felt it. I watched the awareness pass over his face like shadow over snow. He tucked Kai into the rope cradle Jory had rigged, fingers catching for a fraction on the knitted cap. "This is good," he said, "because sometimes kings must bless small things on purpose to remember how to bless large ones without lying." He turned to me. Formality returned to his posture like armor finding shoulder. "Report," he said. I told him everything: garden, bell, grate, the scent in the cupboard, Edda on the cliff, the river that never tired, Run's laugh, Hale's doors, the way Kai quieted when the world remembered not to be cruel for a breath. I left nothing that mattered, kept nothing to make myself brighter. An Omega's power isn't in hoarding. It's in accuracy that refuses to be mean. "Kubru," Aldrich repeated, rolling the idea across his tongue until it yielded what it hid. He glanced at Hale. "You've seen it?" "Twice," she said. "Men who wanted permission from a bottle for the thing they'd already decided to do." Her mouth sharpened. "Both times we took their collars instead." Aldrich's eyes went to Run. "We ride at moonrise," he said. "Stonehaven must know by dawn that their king is inside his own walls and his heir beyond knives." He looked at me. "You and the prince remain." "Like hell," I said, quietly enough it could have been a prayer and rude enough it wasn't. The hall hushed. Aldrich blinked, a man recalculating a map that had just grown a new river. "Speak," he said, no anger, only attention. "You carry a war," I said. "I carry the heir. That's not 2 burdens. It's one story. You get him to the dais at dawn, whole, steady, alive, and the court's belly-up knives turn into dinner knives. If we come after, they have hours to spill poison in ears. I walk through that hall, I still them without a word because their bodies remember what their heads refuse." He didn't flinch. "It's risk." "It is," I said. "But we have been risking small every day, and the enemy has been risking large. Perhaps we do the opposite." Hale's teeth flashed. Run's chuckle was a growl that said yes. Edda, rope still at her belt, nodded like a tree. Aldrich looked at Kai. "Fathers don't get to be only kings." His hand found his son's foot and stayed there, a touch small as a vow. He inhaled. Exhaled. Then, "Very well. We ride together." Relief hit me so hard my knees considered collapsing on their own. I steadied. One more thing, I said. Inside, Lady Vesper smiles like winter and doesn't melt. Lord Branston turns slick at the edges when he speaks of the heir. The steward, too neutral to be true. But the brew in the cupboard? That level of cowardice smells like someone who believes they're benevolent, while they drill holes under the dam. Aldrich's mouth tilted. Pretenders to mercy are the cruelest. His hand lifted, hovered, and then, careful as if touching smoke, rested against the chain at my throat. You knew the latch without me. I counted stones and listened to drafts, I said. An Omega reads rooms or drowns in them. His eyes warmed like a hearth banked for the night. Then read Stonehaven with me at dawn, he said. And let us end the patience of men who think power means they never have to say please. The hall erupted into motion, lists, leather, last bites of stew. Run shifted and shook himself, a snowstorm of fur. Hale barked orders that sounded like affection wearing steel. Etta tightened the rope around us both, not for the cliff this time but for the long road. I lifted Kai and breathed his crown. We ride now, little king, I whispered, my voice the river and the rock. And when they see you, the knives will remember they were spoons once. He burbled something that might one day be a command, then fell asleep with the ease of someone who trusts the people who stand between him and the dark. Moonrise drew a silver seam along the ridges as high hollows spilled into motion. Leather creaked, buckles muttered, breath steamed in quick, competent ghosts. Hale parceled the column like a seamstress, threads for speed, threads for strength, a binding stitch at the center where I rode with Kai. Aldrich swung to saddle with a tired grace that made the men straighten. Run loped ahead in wolf, flank brushing snowgrass, ears taking notes from the wind. Etta tightened the short rope that linked my waist to her saddlehorn. Bumps, she said. Not cliffs. We moved. The first miles tasted of pine and iron. Hooves thudded soft on old needles, then rang on frost-hard stone. The night listened. Every now and then, the column breathed in together, an animal larger than any one of us, and I could feel where courage and fear met and agreed to share the same ribcage for a while. I hummed to Kai, the small river sound threading through the bigger river of marching feet. He slept and woke and slept, ruler of a kingdom the size of my heartbeat. At the ridge above Narrow-Bone Ford, we halted under a bower of black fir. Run returned, fur rimed with glitter. He shifted, unbothered by the cold. 2 scout pairs on the lower road, he reported. May they're ours. They smell like resin in good boots. Eager, not patient. Hale's mouth went flat. Eager gets sloppy. Aldrich looked to me. Shield? Not a test. A habit forming. I closed my eyes and let the night reach my tongue. Damp stone, river sawdust, the faint pepper of fear carried too long. Under it, that bittersweet patience I had learned to hate. They want to see without being seen, I said. But they want to be close to their story when it breaks. Then we give them the wrong chapter, Aldrich said. He sent Run and 2 more north to kick snow and voices, a decoy running bright. Hale peeled a dozen for the flank. The rest ghosted down a deer trail too narrow for pride. We crossed at a ford different from mine and Etta's, this one thigh-deep and swift. Men hissed at the cold through their teeth, horses jerked their heads and forgave us because we asked instead of ordered. On the far bank, Etta squeezed the rope between us. Still here, she said. Still we. Past the river, the land rose in long, patient swells towards Stonehaven's outer woods. Torches pricked the horizon like a rash that hadn't decided whether to bloom. Run's decoy howls curled and thinned, were answered, then drifted away, drawing curiosity with them. We slid between birch and thorn. The castle lifted ahead, dark, stubborn, faceted with the kind of light that never warms anything. Aldrich reined in among the beeches below the north wall. Kellen's sign burned there, 3 slashes of pitch on stone, fresh and hidden at knee height. Alive. Holding. I exhaled, could have wept, didn't. Aldrich's hand brushed my boot as if by accident, a tiny anchor tossed between 2 boats bobbing in the same hard water. We take the postern, he said. Jory hinges. Hail, you're six with me. Ruin. The wolf lifted his head without shifting. Aldrich smiled like a boy with an old friend and pointed. Right where you were going. We waited through 10 heartbeats while Jory's big hands coaxed the bar to forget its job. The postern sighed open. Stonehaven's breath washed over us. Stew, smoke, steel, fear, and something new, expectation, like a rope pulled tight from the other end. No, Aldrich said, and we slid inside the throat of our home. The postern passage ran damp and narrow, a vein threaded behind the castle's outer muscle. Hale placed betas at each kink, a ladder of listening. Far above, a muffled clang, Kellen's punctuation. Run's shadow flowed at the point, a wolf-shaped decision. Edda's rope hummed between us as our strides matched. Kai woke when the air changed to Stonehaven's particular stone, iron-rich, old rain, then settled his cheek to my collarbone as if to say, correct. At the third dogleg the corridor ended in a door so ordinary it could have been a broom closet. Jory kissed his fingers and touched the wood. Hinges agreed to pretend they were butter. We came out into the undercroft, where barrels sleep and secrets ferment. Voices ghosted between columns, low, clipped, men trying not to echo. Hale raised 2 fingers. We became inventory. Can't keep guards doubled forever. One voice fretted. It makes folk ask why. Another voice, smoother, the steward's, I was almost sure. Appearances of caution are prudence, not fear. Let the queen tire of vigilance. Then we. His sentence ended under Run's silent arrival between him and the rest of his breath. Hale's 6 flowed after, hands, hilts, knee to thigh to wrist. No deaths, only sleeping and questions for later. The steward looked up into Aldrich's face like a boy into weather he hadn't dressed for. Your Majesty, he managed. We were prudent, Aldrich said. Excellent. Continue by sleeping quietly until Kellen wakes you with something to confess. We moved on. The hall above the undercroft spilled toward the great stairs. Sense braided there, fear, hope, ambition thinning under apprehension. The Kubru thread pulled me left. Edda felt the tug through the rope and let me lead. A side corridor. A linen press. The same wrong sweetness. Jory pried the panel and there it was again, patience in a bottle. Edda tucked it into her jerkin as if it might learn manners against her ribs. Then the bell. Not the thin servant's alarm, the deep-voiced hall bell that only speaks for fire or kings. Once. Twice. Thrice. Kellen telling the castle, look. Aldrich's mouth set. We go to the dais, he said. We go through the middle. The cowards prefer corners. He looked to me, and the question he didn't ask I answered with a nod I felt to my ankles. We go. Up the last stair. Into the great hall. It was fuller than sense would advise at such an hour. Danger draws watchers the way honey draws flies. Torches guttered in the draught our entrance made. For a heartbeat no one moved, as if a story had reached the page where ink decides whether to turn. Kellen stepped from the foot of the dais, a split lip and eyes like someone who'd eaten a bad dream and dared it to trouble his digestion. He sank to one knee, then stood without waiting for permission. Late, he told Aldrich, as if the king had missed a card game, and relief cracked the hall's face. Alive, Aldrich said. I felt the shift like a tide. Heads turned. Nostrils flared. The crest at my throat burned cold where it met skin. I eased Kai higher, and his small sound, soft, curious, moved through the hall like a lantern being lifted. The scent of the room changed. Not to sweetness. To attention. Bodies remember faster than minds. Somewhere near the council rail, someone's hand withdrew from a hidden hilt without admitting it had been there. Stonehaven, Aldrich said, voice not loud, simply undeniable. Your heir. He didn't take Kai from me. He didn't lift him like a trophy or a shield. He stepped aside so the hall's sideline found us and let them witness what all their whispered theories had been trying to avoid, the child calm, the Omega steady, the king home. The breath went out of our enemies like a candle under a glass. There is a moment in every court when the knives forget they were invited. This was that moment. Lord Brant's mouth opened and closed around a speech he hadn't practiced for this arrangement of facts. Lady Vesper smiled a fraction too soon, then decided to keep smiling lest someone notice the adjustment. The steward, elsewhere now, tied to a barrel, did not arrive to be useful to anyone. Mara descended the side stair, hair damp as if she'd washed her face in a basin and called it armor. Her eyes found Kai first, then me, then Aldrich, an order that told the story of a queen who counted correctly. "Stonehaven," she said from halfway to the dais, catching the hall while Aldrich let the catch rest on her fingers. "Your king is returned. Your heir is whole." Her gaze clicked to the margin where a knot of men tried to look like furniture. "And your queen has questions." Kellen moved like a door swinging. Guards rearranged the oxygen. Hale's northerners became pillars, run a shadow with teeth. The hall did the arithmetic of odds and discovered subtraction. Brant tried suave. "Your Majesties, there has been concern." Whispered talk. "It seemed sensible to what?" Mara asked, and her voice was a silk cord around a throat. "To plan for the accident you were working so diligently to arrange?" "Captain, the cupboard." Edda's vial kissed the dais with a quiet clink. The scent reached the front rows, made a few men flinch as if memory had sharp edges. Mara's lip didn't curl, she'd never give them that, but the stillness at the hinge of her jaw said she stored this offense someplace tender, and would take it out later when no one could pretend it didn't matter. Aldrich stepped forward. "If anyone wishes to claim innocence," he said almost gently, "now is your moment to fail at it convincingly." Lady Vesper did not blanch. She lifted her chin the exact amount required by beautiful people who refuse to share blame with their mirrors. "We are loyal," she said. "We merely lacked information. I smelled the lie like rot under snow." "Your loyalty smelled like resin last night," I said. The room heard me, even the torches leaned. "And your cupboards were patient." Her eyes cut to me, cold surgical light. "And you, little river? What do you smell on yourself? Ambition? A pretty chain? Do you think scent and singing make you a wall?" "No," I said. "They make me the door the child walks through. And the room changes when he arrives." I felt Aldrich beside me, something like pride clipped short before it could become feed for rumor. Kellen's split lip twitched. Hale's eyes warmed. "Run yon wolf slow," which in shifter means I could end you, but I'm choosing manners. Brant tried again, voice buttered. "Surely we can enough," Mara said soft. "Take them to the west cells. Wake the steward. I have questions that prefer candlelight to crowds." Kellen's men obliged with the practiced grace of people who escort trouble daily, and do not trip. The hall exhaled a praise it wouldn't have dared name aloud. Aldrich didn't milk it. He turned reach, not for Kai but for my forearm, a touch brief as a spark. "Shield," he said. "With me." We crossed to the dais. The old throne loomed, the chair that breaks the backs of men who believe sitting is ruling. Aldrich didn't sit. He stood at its shoulder the way you stand by a grave you refuse to dig. I stood with Kai before the lower steps so the smallest could be seen before the tallest. The hall settled into the shape of listening that means there will be fewer mistakes tomorrow morning. "Stonehaven," Aldrich said. "War tests us from without, and cowardice from within. We will meet both with the same remedy, honest teeth and better songs." A ripple of surprised laughter. He let it live. "At dawn I ride east again with those who will follow. The Queen holds the city. The shield holds the air. And you—" His gaze leafed through the crowd, pausing on faces I did not yet know how to weigh. "You hold your neighbor. If his door screams at midnight and you do not ask why, you will have chosen your future very clearly." He raised a hand, not high, palm open to show nothing hidden. "Eat. Sleep. Sharpen." The hall dissolved into chatter and relief and the rustle of people who will be braver for an hour, and perhaps two. When the noise covered us, Mara came close enough to breathe the same square of air. She touched Kai's knitted cap with a finger that trembled once and never again. "Thank you?" She said to me, not etiquette, not performance. Do not let the flattery of a grateful court make you careless. Today you are banner and shield. Tomorrow someone will try to turn you into a banner alone. I prefer shields, I said. They dent, but they don't lie. Her mouth made almost a smile. Good. Dawn fingered the high windows with ash-pale light and found Stonehaven's bones intact. The great hall had emptied to a stubborn few. Guards swapping watches, servants picking up last night's mistakes, Sarah limping in with blood on her hem and a glare that made Kellen's men step out of her path as if their boots had grown mines. I almost sagged with relief. She shrugged at my look. Took the long stairs, she said. A man with a cudgel learned not to stand on them. How's the air? She didn't wait for my answer. She was already checking his nails, his gums, the heat under his scalp. Good, she said, satisfied, and only then let me tuck her into a chair. Aldrich and Mara stood close but not touching, two cliffs containing the river between. They were saying goodbye with their eyes and ironic observations about logistics because to name fear aloud right then would have fed it. Hale rolled maps with the competence of someone who has buried enough friends to plan to bury fewer. Run dozed under the dais. Wolf snore like a blacksmith's bellows. Edda braided her hair into something that would not catch on a man's bad decision. Kellen brought a list. Names, he said. Of those I trust less today than yesterday. Aldrich scanned it, added to with a charcoal that left his fingers streaked like a man branded by his own honesty. Watch them, he said. Don't prod them into bravery. Kellen nodded once, terse affection. Aldrich turned to me. The hall blurred a little around him, as if my eyes had decided to be rude and focus on just one man. You know the latches, he said. You know the drafts. Trust Sarah. Trust Kellen when he is quiet, not when he is shouting. And if the Queen says run, you do not ask me for permission from a battlefield I may not answer from. I won't, I said. But I'd prefer not to run at all. Then neither of us should die today, he said, and almost smiled like a man who remembered how. He looked at Kai. Fathers' hands always hesitate, just for an instant, before they touch their children in front of strangers. It is the last privacy. He smoothed the cap, kissed the boy's brow as if to bless the knit along with the skull beneath. He straightened and the crown settled back onto his scent without creaking. He left with half the hall around him, boots drummed sure on stone, the doors swallowing him, the wake of him tugging at everyone's threads. The great place that had felt small with fear grew larger with purpose. Sleep while the castle pretends to. Sarah ordered me. Twilight will ask more from your scent than morning does. I let the cot in the adjoining chamber take me, boots and all, Kai on my chest, pendant gone warm between us. In that thin borderland before sleep yokes you, I thought I heard the river under the stone hum a word. Not my name. A different one, old and necessary. I said it back to be polite and dropped. When I woke, the light had shifted to the honey color that tricks men into mistakes. Mara sat by the window, reading a dispatch so closely it might confess. She looked up. 2 skirmishes, she said. Our left held. The right traded ground for better ground. Your king is a bore to fight. He never gives men the mistake they plan for. Boring is kind, I said. Kind is survivable. She huffed a sound that could have been agreement. We will make an appearance on the wall at third bell, she said. Let them smell the air on the wind. I washed, changed into a dress with sleeves I could roll past my elbows. Kellen appeared with a harness, leather quiet buckles, so Kai could ride against me with my hands free. He tightened it like he was setting a sword to my spine. You keep center left, he said. If anyone falls, we close around you. If you fall. He stopped. I waited. Don't. I laughed before I could stop myself. It surprised him into the ghost of a grin. Good plan, he said. We went up into the air where the city climbs the wall with its eyes. The crowd below found us, a sound flowers make when sun returns. I felt their hearts climb my ribs. I let my sin unfurl, not sweet, not loud. A steadying, bread, rain, the low percussion of a lullaby learned in a kitchen. Even the men who meant us harm breathed deeper before they remembered they had decided to dislike breathing when I was the reason. "Look!" Mara called, voice ringing clear. "We are here." She didn't promise safety. She promised presence. The difference matters. Evening set its teeth in the horizon and pulled. Torches flowered along streets and parapets, small suns acknowledging that the big one had other appointments. The city's noise changed flavor. Market clatter thinning to domestic percussion, the faint iron song of a forge finishing a thought, somewhere a child testing a shout and liking it. Sarah brought me tea that tasted like bark and patience. "You'll need your voice," she said. "People will ask you to name what they're feeling so they don't have to be alone with it." I sipped. It steadied the places water doesn't reach. Kellen's runners began to feed us news in bites. The eastern ridge held. The old mill road, ambushed then reclaimed. A banner, ours, seen at the ice bridge. No toll paid. My chest loosened and tightened in alternating tides. Mara paced in small squares to save her knees for larger ones. Every time leather creaked, Kai's lashes fluttered, then settled. He had learned Stone's heartbeat. Perhaps Stone had learned his. We were descending from the wall when the west corridor's air kinked. Scents swerved, citrus snapfear, old sweat, a sweetness that wanted to be comfortable and was not. I stopped. Sarah stopped because I stopped, Kellen because he always keeps periphery on a leash. "Talk to me," he said. "Someone," I said slowly, "who believes they are about to do a brave thing that is actually a cowardly thing is waiting around the corner with words that will hurt only if we let them." He nodded, drew two fingers in a motion his men understood. A pair moved without noise, became the corner themselves. A voice drifted back, familiar, the steward. Awake, apparently. "Your Grace?" He simpered to someone out of our sight. "If we could just speak." The someone answered low, threaded with impatience and grief. "Mara. You had plenty of words when the cupboard under your hand learned to keep bottles warm." We arrived at the turn to find the steward kneeling because Kellen had made him. His face glistened like a candle left too near a wall. "I did it for the realm," he said. "In case, if the air was weak, if the king, someone had to decide." Mara finished softly, and the softness made it worse. "You love deciding when the cost is paid by other bodies." She looked at me. "Shield. How do we mend a hole in a dam made by a man who calls it a window?" "By naming it a hole and filling it with rock," I said. Sarah's mouth twitched. Kellen's didn't. He hauled the steward to his feet. "West cells," Mara said. "Put him near the drunk minstrel who sings at the worst possible time. If mercy exists, let it be educational." On our way past the chapel arch, a flicker drew me, candlelight guttering without drafts. My skin prickled. I stepped inside. The small room smelled of old smoke and the wax that records prayers. A new scent cut across the old, wolfsbane, not liquid now, but dust, as if someone had ground it and blown it hoping to fog our edges. "Sarah," I said, and she was already at my shoulder. We found it under the altar's lip, dusted into the cracks where hands would rest. Enough to sicken a pup. Enough to dull a queen. Kellen didn't swear. He has elevated silence to a curse more eloquent than most words. He swept the dust into a small jar and corked it like venom. "Someone with keys," he said. "Someone who knows where hands go when men pretend to be humble." We quickened our steps back to the nursery. I hated the sudden mean thought that followed me. Had my scent made it harder for enemies to reach the air? Had I become a challenge they resented? I banished it as unsound. The kind of men who poison altars don't need excuses. They need locks and, later, daylight. In the nursery I checked hinges and latches with the ritual of a woman who has outlived regret more than once. Sarah layered herbs in the hearth, smoke that eats smells we do not want. Kai drowsed in the second cradle, breath hitching only when the draft shifted, a baby who knew, by now, the weather of rooms. "Sit," Sarah ordered. "Eat this bread. The queen will come." Men will say things. Your scent will need its legs under it. I obeyed. Bread always remembers how to be a bridge. I chewed, breathed, hummed. By the time Mara stepped in, tired, still beautiful, not caring, I was ready to be river and weir. Mara closed the door with the weary precision of someone who has spent an entire day fastening other people's lids. She went straight to the cradle, leaned down, and let the truth of her face show where only 2 women and a child could see it. Then she masked it again and turned, the queen reassembled. "We're not done," she said. "But we are not undone." She told us what the dispatches could not, that Aldrich's right had refused to be bait, that his left had made a trap out of retreat, that he had spoken to men as if they were worth the breath, and they had returned the compliment with their bones. "He'll sleep 2 hours and dream standing," she said. "And there will be a line of boys pretending not to want to be him while wanting it so hard their teeth ache." Kellen arrived to stand where he always stands, between door and bad news. "Vesper's tongue is behaving," he said. "Her friend's feet less so. We pried 3 bottles out of cupboards and 1 from a boot." He held up a second small jar, the chapel poison. "And this?" Mara's eyes narrowed. "They touch the altar?" Her voice contained a blade. "Whoever believes themselves pious tonight will discover how small their gods are beside mine." She exhaled hard enough to ripple the candle flame. "We need to change the rhythm. We have been reacting. We will set the next beat." I felt the shape of an answer before my mouth could make it. "Then we make a room no one expects, and we choose who is allowed inside it," I said. "Not council. Not ceremony. A place with no corners. The child in the center. You and I and Sarah and Kellen at 4 points. We invite the men who think they decide. We let their bodies remember they like breathing." Kellen's split lips smiled. "I can arrange no corners." Sarah snorted. "I can arrange a room that smells like truth." Mara tilted her head, calculating the theater and the necessity. "At dawn," she decided. "In the old armory. It has good bones and bad memories. We will overwrite them. We slept in the nursery in shifts, the way women have always slept when the world is borrowing their men. I lay on the cot with the chain cool between my breasts, the scent of herbs forgiving the air for what it had tried to be. In the hour before dawn, I woke with the certainty that someone was watching. Not the bad kind. The other kind. I looked up. Aldrich stood in the doorway like a man who had walked back through winter without asking it for permission. Snow scabbed his boots. Blood, his or someone else's, had dried in a galaxy across his sleeve. His eyes found the cradle, counted breath, found me. Something he'd been carrying dropped. The floor did not shake, but I did. He didn't come further. He didn't need to. Presence is its own distance. We held, he said softly, a report to women who had earned it. We broke them where the ice knows my name. His gaze flicked to Kellen's jar on the mantel. "And here?" "Rot scraped from a holy place," Mara said from her chair by the window. She had not pretended to sleep. "We will make a room at dawn and clean the palace by breathing in it." Aldrich's eyes moved to me. For a second the room shed everyone else. "Shield," he said, voice rough. "You carried him through stone. And back," I said. "Rooms remember a child that survives inside them." He nodded once, a bow only I was close enough to see. "At dawn, then. Make them remember." He looked at his son one last time and left before his scent could turn the room into a home he could not afford to choose. When the bell tolled the morning, I dressed Kai in blue and wool and courage. Sarah packed the truth into smoke. Kellen and his men turned the old armory into a circle with walls that agreed to witness. Mara braided her hair like a crown and left her jewels on the table. I fastened the crest against my sternum and felt its weight find the rhythm of my breath. We walked into the room we had made. The men arrived with their lies and their fears, and for once I was not the smallest thing present. I was the river. I carried the child to the middle and set him down where the floor could feel the future through his feet. "Begin," Mara said. And I did. The old armory held its breath, as if the stone itself understood the weight of the moment. Morning light slanted through the arrow slits in thin, holy blades, cutting the circle into truth and shadow. We stood at 4 points around Kai, Mara, Sarah, Kellen, and I, 4 corners without corners, a square made of people rather than walls. The nobles and councilmen filed in under guard, the air around them tight with nerves and the metallic scent of men who suddenly realized their performances would no longer protect them. No dais. No throne. No table to hide behind. Just a circle and the air at its heart. Mara began, not with accusation, but with invitation. "Speak of the future you claim to want for Stonehaven," she said. "Say it aloud, here, with the next generation listening." One by one, voices cracked into the air. Some spoke of safety, of pride, of strength. Others spoke of glory, too sharpened to be trusted. Lady Vesper's voice hovered like frost, beautiful but hungry. When she finished, silence turned every eye toward me. I smelled the room as a map. Fear pulled behind ribs. Guilt clung like damp wool. But hope, faint, new, threaded across the floor from servant to guard to young page waiting by the door. They wanted a reason to unclench. I stepped forward and let my scent unfurl, steady, warm, river hum. "You have spoken of futures," I said. "But a future for a kingdom is measured by how we treat the smallest life entrusted to us. If we poison altars, whisper in cupboards, plan for a child's death while calling it preparation, then we have already lost the thing we claim to protect." No one moved. Not even the torches dared flicker. When the air cried, I continued, "You saw weakness." But his cry gathered us. Brought us to truth, to loyalty, to a night where wolves and omegas and queens and outcasts stood together. If that is weakness, may we never be strong. Something ruptured, not loudly, but deeply. A guard near the wall inhaled and straightened as if he'd remembered his spine. A court scribe lowered his eyes, ashamed. Even Lady Vesper's mask thinned at the edges. Aldrich stepped into the circle then, unexpectedly, quietly, as if he'd walked out of the stone itself. Dust and cold still clung to him from the battlefield beyond the eastern ridge. He looked not like a king returning to rule, but like a leader returning to listen. "I have been taught many things about power," he said. "But last night, an Omega showed me the difference between holding a title and holding a life." His gaze landed on Kai, then on me, and stayed. "Power that requires a child to die is cowardice in armor. Power that chooses protection, connection, and truth, no matter the cost, is the only kind that deserves to last." Mara stepped beside him, queen and king, not touching, but aligned in a way that made touching unnecessary. "This child does not need a court designed to fear him," she said. "He needs a court that chooses to deserve him." A quiet sob broke near the back. Not grief, release. Kellen placed the jar of wolf's bane and the vial of cool brew in the circle's center. "This is what rots a kingdom," he said. Then he stamped down with his boot, crushing glass and plan alike. Powder puffed up, dead useless. The room exhaled, as if a spell had been broken. Aldrich knelt before his son, and the gesture uprooted everyone's understanding of rank. "From this day," he said, voice low but ringing, "Stonehaven will be led by those who protect the smallest, not those who scheme the loudest." And there, in that plain room with no throne and no polished ceremony, a new era took its first breath. Kai giggled, soft and sudden, as if the future had tickled him. Laughter rippled around the circle, cautious at first, then real. People unclenched. Shoulders dropped. The river inside me widened, carrying light downstream. After the council was dismissed, after consequences were assigned and new oaths spoken, Aldrich walked with me to the doorway. "You changed something today," he said quietly. "Not just for him." His eyes, storm and warmth, held mine as if the world outside them could wait. "If you choose to stay beyond your duty, Stonehaven would be stronger for it." A choice. Not a command. I looked to Kai, bright-eyed, safe, curious about everything he touched, and I knew my answer had already lived in me long before he was placed in my arms. "I stay," I said. Because a river doesn't leave just because the valley finally learned its name. Aldrich's exhale was soft, almost a smile. Then let's raise a king worth the river that kept him alive. Stonehaven changed after that, not all at once, but like winter learning spring. Courtyards filled with training and laughter. Wolves and omegas walked the same halls without stepping into shadow. And in the evenings, when the castle quieted, I would hum by the hearth with Kai on my lap, and sometimes, Aldrich, Mara, Sarah, Kellen, and Run would sit with us, no crowns, no ranks, just people who refused to let fear write their story ever again. Some nights, Aldrich would stand at the window, arms folded, gaze on the city below, and say, "It's quieter than it ever was." And I would answer, "That's what happens when you stop listening for knives." Because peace, I learned, is not silent. It is a lullaby sung where once there was panic. And a child who grows knowing safety was chosen for him, not stolen. And that was how the kingdom began again. Not with a coronation, but with an omega, a river, an heir, and a room with no corners.